gracious. Does it bring back old memories? Goodness. Everything is so dark.
Remember the bathroom?
Vaguely.
Mom said they used to soap up the floor
Yeah.
and slide into the bathtub.
I don't remember all that. Your mother remembers a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Yeah, the view I know. My first memory of Bomo is of sitting at the foot of her chair in Yonkers while a big fire crackled away and the long winter's afternoon in its cold, dark grayness disappeared. Bomba was reading to me some story about lions in the jungle, how real that jungle was, and all its big, tawny lions just waiting for some small child like myself to gobble up with one snap of their yawning jaws. All was so cozy and peaceful and warm. "Read another, Bombo," I asked, and she read me another. What child could ask for more? My next memory of her is my lying on my stomach on the sofa in the music room with my head buried in a round black velvet pillow with gold stripes where the velvet had worn down to the nap. Sunshine poured in the room's great windows, The carpet on the floor was also gold, and from the piano poured forth a stream of music, pure gold and sunshine intermingled. Cascades of sound rolled forth, and the crescendos were like a waterfall of sound, like an avalanche of power. It was thrilling and unforgettable. Never have I heard Debussy or Chopin or Delius or Beethoven or César Franck played with such force and feeling. At that time, my grandmother was in her early 50s. I thought her beautiful. Her hair was already an aureole of shining pure white, but the nape of her neck was a raven's wing black, and her dark eyes, which were velvet brown, had a band around them of royal blue, just like a Swiss pansy. Fire and softness combined in the glance. She sat very straight, with her lovely arms moving in one glorious undulating line from the nape of the neck down the romantic shoulders to the exquisitely formed hands, which ended in perfect almond nails, which were faintly pink. Deeply moved, she closed her eyes, and swayed back and forth, moving in rhythm with the tidal wave of sound she had unleashed within the piano. The long dress flowed to the ground. How well I remember that dress, the loveliest I ever saw her in. It was made with an underskirt and a bodice of coral rose satin, over which was draped dove or silver gray chiffon. Her full and snowy bosom rose out of the softness of the gray, like a sunset behind a veil of clouds. She wore no jewelry, not even a string of pearls or a pin, only on her hands a tiny old-fashioned ring of rough rose-cut diamonds, rather battered and small, set on dull gold. Her loveliness and charm needed no jewels. Years passed. Then I was standing in the greenhouse with Bombo, and we're both equipped with old shabby toothbrushes with white ivory handles and soap and water. We are busily removing some aphids from the endless rows of chrysanthemums. James, the Italian gardener, is a young and virile man, tan, black-haired, black-eyed, jovial and slim. My beautiful grandmother and he and the colors of the flowers seem a wonderful blending of good and wholesome and lovely things. How I loved the acrid perfume of chrysanthemums and the smell of the freshly watered earth mixed with the moist warmth of the glass houses. We are all happily engaged in a common task, making the flowers grow. Later, in warmer weather, I would be outside in the vegetable garden with Bombo, and there Carlo, James's young helper, would be busy, full of jokes, kindness, and affection for everyone. His big black shepherd dog running back and forth on the paths, carefully avoiding the lush rows of spinach and beans and flowers. My passion was raw kohlrabi, and he would wash the great green balls under the fresh cold water and peel them for me. I can still taste the hard, crispy delight of it. Bombo, meanwhile, had arranged with James that baskets of heaping vegetables would be given to others as gifts. No one ever left empty-handed. Now it is late summer, and we're seated on the porch, which is festooned with delectable grapes. They hang in maddening profusion, both black and white, tempting the bees and torture to me. Bombo and Grandpapa are comfortable in rocking chairs. On the table are all sorts of good things to eat, and my grandfather, as usual, is having a glass of homemade wine. What I remember most about him is his air of authority and his being very much at home. No bird in her nest ever looked more settled in her proper domain. By contrast, my grandmother seemed excitable and restless, always giving orders, supervising things, running about, managing, never quite allowed to sit back and drink in the beauty of the great panorama of the sloping lawns and the Palisades and the Hudson River which lay before their eyes, for it was a scene of great splendor which I had become so accustomed to that even when I saw it emerge from her canvas and under my eyes, I never quite thought of it as anything unique. Just lovely. I still have one of her snow scenes done of this view, with the great rows of the blue spruce and ponderous in snow, while behind them the Palisades are violet. Now my grandmother loved to paint. The very smell of turpentine and the feel of the brushes was a joy to her. She showed me her first canvas done in the Adirondacks. Out of the rose beige floor of pine needles emerge a stiff, pasty stems of the pines, and all about them are lumps of muddy green rocks. Like the work of all beginners, it was replete in muddy color, absent in light, and iron stiff, but unlike the work of most beginners, it breathed her love of nature and her great strength. Mine was the joy of seeing her in later years do work of ethereal delicacy, united with a vigor and pasto and verve which so truly combined her vitality and femininity as a person. She was a true impressionist, and her best work was done outdoors, even in the coldest weather. She started painting at 50 and joined the class of Hobart Nichols, N.A., and worked as hard or harder than the youngest pupils there. Christmas, I think, was her time of greatest joy, for then she had the whole family together and was able to bring to it months of careful love for everyone. Hand-knitted socks hung from the mantelpiece for all the male members of the family. A tremendous tree was festooned with chocolate coins and assorted treasures, while each child had identical gifts so as to still the demon of jealousy which raged in our small and savage breasts. Inside in the hall, the grown-ups were having caviar and
Champagne.
and what?
Champagne. Thing.
What's this?
Yes, it's champagne.
Champagne.
And champagne, but of ruby red and green baccarat glasses, which were hand-cut. Piles of chopped egg whites and onions, etc., were available along with the parsley and lemon for garnishing. The Swiss hand-carved family, who had been installed by the front door to hold coats and umbrellas and boots, etc., sported from the carved tree branches all our caps and mittens and jackets. Father Bear stood erect and noble, while at his foot Baby Bear sat small and quiet. I always fed them both my fat jelly sandwiches. 20 years later, I still saw the remains in their teeth. Then came the grand moment when we descended into the big dining room. The long table with its heavy lace cloth was flanked on all sides with carved oak chairs, and on the table the famous red reindeer with his bobbing head in his snowy tundra of cotton. Each place had a paper party snapper to pull with a loud bang, and a hat inside with a toy. Much excitement and spilling of milk and angry reprimands by fathers and mothers while the ritual of the feast got underway. The mounds of puree of chestnuts, whipped with cream, and delicious endive, and last but never least the fabulous sticky meringue glacé with coffee and cream from the kitchen in perfect unblemished harmony, poured in a stream of varying delight year after year. My grandfather, restless, would tramp around the table, forcing his various homemade wines on us poor children. Grapefruit, champagne, and other gooey horrors. Only years later did I discover that all his wines tasted alike. They were all reminiscent in flavor of Manischewitz. The use of Concord grapes had given his wine a foxy taste. We children were the wine tasters to the king. We very much enjoyed our role, but the smaller ones were soon staggering slightly. Bonbon, of course, put a swift stop to all this, but it was all part of the happy fun. At camp in the Adirondacks, my memories of Bonbon are of breakfast at 8 in the icy cold dining room after her morning swim nude in an icier lake. I was only a child, and it was torture to me, but how full of vigor and cheerful heartiness Bonbon was. It was all a delight to her. Then off we would go fishing, painting, picnicking, and shopping. The bustle and heartiness followed her just as foam follows the ocean liner. Her pealing laugh and infectious spirits were the background of our lives. In her presence, quarrels became petty wrangles, which were healed by the passing around of chewing gum candies. Whatever the children did was somehow glossed over, and our crimes were numerous. Governesses, nurses, servants, parents might be incensed or outraged, but somehow Bonbon was on the side of the naughty imps, and we survived. This is the Bonbon I knew, lovely, happy, gay, hospitable, full of energy, surrounded by her family and friends, and very much the hub and center of all our lives. Not until someone is no longer there can we ever estimate the meaning of his or her life. The faults which loom so large disappear. Our mistakes and misunderstandings vanish, and all that remains throughout the years are the splendid warmth and love which radiate untarnished, unchanged forever.
That is so beautiful.
Well, you know, I couldn't write that now because I don't have the memories anymore, but it was like that, and I'm so glad I wrote it for everyone else.
We're sharing it, yeah.
Yeah, I'm so
We're gonna
glad.
share it
It's
with
a wonderful memory, and it's so beautifully written, too.
Well,
You should publish this with your poetry.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, this is poetry.
Well, it's nice of you to say so, dear. Awfully nice of you to say so. Oh, the ghost.
Yeah.
Yes, you mean my grandfather. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, my husband and I were upstairs in the bedroom he used to occupy at Snug Rock. And I heard a man's footsteps going up the stairs and going right to our door. And my husband was terrified, but absolutely terrified. But I wasn't terrified. I got up out of bed and I followed the sound of these footsteps walking into the room next door. And then there was nothing. It was my grandfather.
Yeah. It was right after he passed away?
Oh yes,
Pretty
he
close.
died. He died.
Yeah.
And as I said, my husband was utterly terrified.
He heard it too.
Oh, of course.
Wow.
Certainly he heard it.
Yeah.
And he was just like this.
And you went outside to see, and
I went outside
the
and followed the footsteps into the next room where they vanished.
you didn't have a conversation with him?
Oh, no.
Didn't say,
No, I couldn't
hey,
say
Grandpa, are you
Well,
there?
that's the story.
Yeah. Wow.
But I think it's perfectly normal.
Sure. In his house, and you
In
were in
his house, and
Yeah.
we were in his room,
Amazing.
and nobody was there. There wasn't a person in the place. And I could hear the footsteps coming from downstairs all the way up the stairs, up to the where our door, where our room was,
Yeah.
and then going right past us into the next
And
room.
that was his bedroom.
That was his bedroom.
Now, Bombo had another bedroom on the
Bobo
other
lived
side?
on the other side of the house.
Okay.
There was a man who worked for them, and he would let me get on the back of his skis and take me down. And it was very, very nice to me. And I have, what do you want to call it, extrasensory perception or something? And I told my family not to trust him, that he was a bad man. And they didn't believe me. And he chased the cook around the big furnace downstairs off the kitchen and tried to kill her. He was crazy.
Oh boy.
And I was right.
Wow.
So they got rid of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, after that, I would think so.
But he was very nice to me. You know, but nobody believed in intuition, and I had it. All I know is that my grandfather liked to swim,
Yeah.
and he would go in with his clothes on.
He swam
didn't-
with his clothes on?
Yeah, he didn't care. He
I
always
think that would
changed.
drag him down.
He could always change to other clothes. Not a problem.
What did your grandmother think of that?
Well, I don't know. I didn't pay any attention to what other people thought.
Even back then?
Yeah, even
Wow.
back then.
All right.
My grandmother, really, we saw an awful lot of her. Don't forget, I had the winters with her, and I had the summers with her, and I had every weekend.
Wow.
Fantastic.
So that's different.
Yeah.
It's so long ago, I don't remember. I'm sorry,
It's all
dear.
right. It's all right.
I'm not a big one for memories. No.
Live in the present.
Well, I have to.
Yeah.
I have no choice. That's all I've got.
Yeah.
The rest is gone.
Yeah.